What's up, yo? Welcome to Your One Life. I'm your host, Kim Young Kim, and I'm super glad to have you as a listener today. If you're new here, here's what this podcast is all about. This podcast is about teaching you from the greatest minds in the world, assisting you in all aspects of your life, and helping you to live with integrity when it really matters, which is when people are watching you. Now, today's episode is on a book called The Secrets of Adulthood by Gretchen Rubin. And if you don't know who she is, Gretchen Rubin is a straight-up boss and someone I've been learning from for years now. She's the author of seven New York Times bestselling books with millions of copies sold. On top of that, she's a host of 2 podcasts with 220 million downloads to date and one of the most influential leaders on happiness and human nature. She also has a law degree from a little school called Yale, and started off her career by clerking for Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, which is something I just love as a fun fact. Now, Secrets of Adulthood is filled with hundreds of aphorisms, which are concise statements that share a great big truth. And she's lived a full life, raised 2 wonderful daughters, and has just become an empty nester recently. Congratulations, Gretchen. But beyond that, she has had an amazing impact on the world, so she knows a thing or two about living. And speaking of which, this book reminds me a lot of Kevin Kelly's book, Excellent Advice for Living, which I previously did an episode on. It's a great book, and if you haven't heard the episode yet, the link will be in the show notes. Now, a big reason Gretchen wrote this book is to improve her daughters' lives, but also to share her life wisdom with the rest of the world. And the way I wrote this script is I read the book and I went through and picked a number of the nuggets that she shared, close to about 60. And then I picked the ones that I felt were most universally helpful, which came down to about 20. Now, there's a lot of good stuff that I had to cut, but no worries, because you can always pick up the book yourself. All right, so I'm going to start off with an impactful life hack that she shares early in the book. She says, "It's easier to change our surroundings and our schedules than to change ourselves." And that's spot on. Now, if your pharmacy is inside a Walmart or a Target, and every time you go to pick up your prescription strength lotion, because your skin is drier than cattleman's beef jerky, you end up walking out the store with a brand new microwave, and your wife complains to you that your living room is starting to look like an Amazon warehouse, maybe what you got to do is change your pharmacy to a standalone pharmacy, or better yet, get your meds delivered. One thing I've learned in life is you can't have good habits in a bad environment. Now, the advice I've given to my students for years now is if you're trying to quit getting high, stop going over to Nacho's house. He ain't got no job, he don't go to school, but he always has weed to roll up. Now, in regards to self-care, Gretchen says this: if you find it hard to take good care of yourself, care for yourself like a toddler. Don't let yourself get too hungry, too tired, uncomfortable, bored, lonely, or overwhelmed. Because if you allow any of these to happen, you too may have a meltdown in line at Disney World. All right, moving on. In regards to making conversation easier, Gretchen says, if you can't think of a topic of conversation, ask this question: what's keeping you busy these days? I really like this one because it opens up the conversation to wherever they'd like to take it. And also, everyone loves to brag about how busy they are. Okay, so another piece of advice that she gives in regards to conversing with other people is, if there's something you don't want to talk about, she says, one way to thwart a conversation is to refuse to answer. Another way is to talk and talk. And a third way that I like to personally use is to pretend you suddenly lost your sense of hearing. And if you can, start pretending to have a meltdown so you can really sell it. But no, for real, that's right though. You can literally make eye contact or not make eye contact with someone and not respond to what they said. You can also literally walk away from a conversation. There's a great quote that goes, "You don't have to attend every argument that you're invited to." And that is so spot on. And this also applies with social media comments. You can actually let someone's craziness just sit there for the whole world to see and not respond to it. Now, in regards to relating to others, she says, we make people happier by acknowledging their feelings when they're down. She says a popular but not effective strategy is to deny their feelings and saying stuff like, it can't be that bad, or nobody even listens to the song, They Not Like Us. She says that's not helpful, and it's better to actually acknowledge what they're going through. And when we say things like, that sounds like a really frustrating experience, we actually help them to feel understood. All right, so in regards to having difficult conversations, she says, if possible, have a challenging conversation while walking. I remember reading this advice in Dr. Julie Smith's book, Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before? And I said to myself, wow, that is such a great idea. Because first off, you're moving your body, which is always a good thing. And you don't have the discomfort of looking at each other. And if it gets too real, you can always break out and run off. Life hacks, baby. Let's go. Okay, so another piece of advice that she gives in regards to relationships with other people is to become your best self because others may follow suit. She says, we can't make people change, but when we change, our relationships change. And so others may also change. Yep, that's spot on right there. And this is just a beautiful byproduct of self-improvement. Change inspires change. And in general, the better of a person you become, the better the people around you become, because you have an effect on others just like they have an effect on you. In regards to making friends, she says this: one of the best ways to find friends is to make friends with the friends of our friends. And this is such great advice. And that's why the friend zone can actually be a good thing. Because making one friend could turn into making 25 friends or more. I learned this lesson last year when I joined the Crips, which is still one of the best decisions I've ever made. Now, regarding developing the depths of our friendships, she says this: working together often builds friendships faster than having fun together. Nah, bro, we're not reshingling my roof. We're engaging in male bonding. Real talk, though. This is something I've wanted to do for a very long time, either with friends of mine or with people in my neighborhood. I even post in my neighborhood Facebook group to start another neighborhood group called Neighbors in Labor. But I haven't done it yet, mainly because I'm trying to stay off of Facebook. Also, I'm a little sketched out about hanging out with someone that I don't know for 2 hours or maybe more, because I'm worried they might end up getting on my nerves. So if any of my friends out there are listening, our bushes ain't going to trim themselves. Let's get her done. All right. In regards to getting respect, Gretchen says this: to respect us, people must first notice us. We can't earn trust and admiration from the sidelines. That's right. Which is why every time I hand cash to a homeless person, I make sure it's being video recorded so that my good deeds can be seen by the World Wide Web. Now, when it comes to outsmarting others, Gretchen says we're doing it all wrong. She says we're more like other people than we think. We go to the grocery store on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving to beat the crowd, thinking everyone will be there on Wednesday, so Tuesday becomes the busiest day. When we go to the bathroom, we think the stall closest to the door gets the most use, so the center stall turns out to get the most use. Now, me personally, what I do is I use all 3 stalls at the same dang time. But real talk, she's spot on with this information. She explains to us that we think we're outwitting other people, and they try to outwit us exactly the same way. Now, regarding our use of language, Gretchen says this: words and metaphors matter. She shares a story about King John II of Portugal, who in the late 1400s actually renamed the Cape of Storms in Africa to the Cape of Good Hope to get people to trade there. She then talks about our own language and asks, do you say that you spend time or invest time? That's good because spending time can be seen as negative, but investing is always seen as positive. Another phrase she shares is one of my favorites, which is, do I have to do it or do I get to do it? I used this one just the other day when I said to myself, do I have to testify under oath or do I get to testify under oath? Do I have to tell the truth or do I get to be creative with the truth? Hopefully the latter. Now, I used to drive a Mazda, but I called it my Maserati because I whipped around town like I was in a Gran Turismo. Now, in regards to hard work, Gretchen says this: the person who works the hardest isn't necessarily doing the best work. She shares a story where Laurence Olivier and Dustin Hoffman were in the same movie together, and Hoffman stayed up for 48 hours straight in order to play a character who's been up for 3 days in a row. And Laurence Olivier looks at him and he says, "My dear boy, why don't you just try acting?" Now, this is such a funny story, and it would have been an even funnier story if it were Vin Diesel, but there's no way in hell Sir Lawrence would be cast in the same movie with VD. And this story makes me think about how a lot of people actually don't sharpen themselves in their craft. But when you do, when you put in the work to become great, you eventually end up working less because better opportunities come your way and you're not scrounging for work. Because when you're so good they can't ignore you, the world is your oyster. Now, in regards to managing your energy, she says this: nothing is more exhausting than a task that's never started. Yikes, I feel exposed. But seriously, I look at my overgrown bushes, and every day I say to myself, tomorrow. I'll handle that tomorrow. And every time I say that, I die a little bit on the inside. So do the thing so you don't end up feeling like me. And that's why it's important to take care of your yard and also take care of your space. Here's another thing she says on that topic: outer order can contribute to inner calm. Yep, that's right. I feel this way every time I clean out my car or I clean my house. I just feel more calm inside when my space is in order. And that's why I'm trying to change into a person who does that more often. Now, regarding making important changes in our lives, she says this: we often want to change what's easy to change rather than change what needs to be changed. She continues on and says that when we feel the need for personal transformation, we oftentimes tackle the wrong aspects of our life. Here's a few examples that she gives on that topic. People oftentimes give up coffee rather than giving up wine. Or couples renovate the kitchen instead of fixing their marriage. She referenced a story about a woman who called her realtor one day and told him she doesn't want to move. The woman explained, "I thought I wanted an apartment with an outdoor space, but really, I want a husband." And I totally feel that because I bought a house with a yard to impress the ladies when I really should have just bought a cheesecake factory. But real talk, you do need to look at your life and you need to make those important changes that are actually going to change your life. Not necessarily the things that are the easiest, but the changes that are the most fruitful. And speaking of which, she talks a lot about fighting your temptations. And here's one thing that she says on that topic: petty and immediate pleasures may crowd out great and enduring pleasures. And that is so spot on. A great quote that I love on this topic is this: don't give up what you want most for what you want now. Now, it's a tough fight to say no to things, to delay gratification, but it's definitely a fight worth fighting because you end up getting what you want most in the end. Further on this topic, here's what she says: nothing is stronger than a weakness. Yep, that's right. Alcohol, anger, and pride have all landed people in jail. You have weaknesses. I have weaknesses. You need to ask yourself, what are your greatest weaknesses? And whatever they are, you're going to have to battle with them and manage them in order to have a good life. Now, one interesting paradox in life is this: your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. The first time I heard that phrase, it was like a mic drop moment, because it is so true in my life, and I'm sure it's true in yours as well. Because your compassion could end up with you getting trampled on. and your competitiveness could turn people off from playing with you. And because of this, you have to recalibrate yourself to make sure that you're navigating life in a way that's most beneficial for you. Regarding your weaknesses, she says this: one of the best uses of willpower is to avoid situations that require willpower. And that's why you got to stay away from Nacho's house. But real talk, I've heard of people with an alcohol problem who straight up can't go to nice restaurants because they'll end up ordering drinks and they'll fall off the wagon. And not going to restaurants that serve alcohol, which is most restaurants, honestly, is a tough thing to do, but you got to do what you got to do, and fighting any vice that will ruin your life is worth it. And she goes on to say that abstinence can be easier than moderation. These are nothing but facts, which is why I permanently deleted TikTok from my phone years ago. That stuff is straight up crack, and Facebook and Instagram are as well on a lower level, and those two are next. All right, so we're almost done with the episode. Here's a great piece of advice that she shares in making the holidays and family gatherings more palatable. Gretchen says, if you're dreading a family occasion, bring a guest, because many difficult people behave better in front of outsiders. Yeah, that is so true. And depending on your family member, your guest may also need to be a bodyguard. But real talk, this works so well, and I know people who actually intentionally invite a friend of the family to keep their one crazy family member from living with integrity and being their authentic self because somebody's watching. All right, so I'm going to end this episode on a total banger of life advice, and here it is. Gretchen says this: when uncertain about how to proceed, make the choice that allows you to choose the bigger life, step into the future, live in an atmosphere of growth, deepen or broaden your relationships, and put your values into the world. Boom, that's mic drop advice right there. And yes, that's what we all got to do. We got to make the choices that make our lives bigger, that make our lives more enriched, and that make our lives everything that we want them to be. All right, so that's the episode. I hope you like it, and I hope you got a lot out of it. Now, if you're new here, don't forget to hit the follow button so you don't miss future episodes. And if you enjoyed this episode, my only ask for you is to send the episode link to a friend who could use this message, or share it to your stories wherever you hang out online. Shout out to my dude Siraj Rhett, who made the instrumental for this podcast. And big ups to you for all the good you'll do with the Secrets to Adulthood. All right, so that's all I got for now. This is Your One Life. I'm Kim Young Kim. I hope you have a great day, a great week, and until next time, peace!